All right. So I'm gonna lay this out. This so far is my genius plan. I am a genius. um, this is a game that I'm working out of my head. I'm not sure it's 100% in my head, but I have at least enough to decide on what the rules are and how it's going to work in this game. Now, this of course is the game. You know what? I'm gonna call it. I'm gonna call it Masters of Eternia. And these are the Masters of Eternia. It is, as I said before, it's based on a very ancient game called Mehen, and and this is what I got so far. So I'm going to explain a few things. Okay, so uh, on that end of the board is where the game would start, and you are confronted with the keeper of the weapons and the land of the law of the animal, if you will, beast man. The the animal law being kill or be killed, eat or eat or eat. Eat, kill, kill or be killed. Eat who you kill. Oh, I don't know what the law. I don't know what the law of the animal is. The law of the jungle. Ha. Um, okay, I'm keeping it together. So you enter the game from the starting point. I imagine your two players would actually exist on either side of the board, uh, so that you can see both sides from where you are or whatever, however you can reach. I've I've decided on the chessboard as what I have the means for, but okay. So you begin the game by entering via the area where Beastman distributes the weapons, if you will, the law of the animal, the law of the land, enters you into the kingdom, and then your pawns then travel in a snake-like pattern. Snake being a reference to the Mehen game, which was a snake-like board, and you make your way down to this end of the board, where you are then confronted with the sorceress, who is something of a godlike or goddess figure. And once your pawns get to this side of the board, then they become the crowned or the undefeatable characters who then obtain a lion, if you will, or a panther battle cat. Uh, Alternatively, they could also acquire a vehicle, and then once you have the lion or the vehicle, you then travel back through the board and devour the other characters and defeat the other team, if you will, not your own. defeat the other team on your way back across the board, and that the pawns have to come this way. They have to come in this direction, and once you become crowned or you acquire a vehicle, then you can go both ways on the board. That's what I believe the game rules are going to be, and I would assume that these players are pretty good. If you had other masters pieces, or if you wanted to use something other than the MegaConstrux, which is what I'm actually quite enjoying the MegaConstrux. They're a bit small, but that's good for a game. If you wanted to use full size pieces or whatever, that's an option. So this game is a dice rolling game, and I believe that I believe that you can use all 6 sides of the dice. However, there was an idea in my head that perhaps the 5 or the 6 roll was a magic roll, and that roll allowed for some special privilege or some access of which is not clearly obvious. And what I'm thinking is actually that if there's going to be a magic roll, then it might simply have to do with acquiring the vehicle or the beast of which you then become the undefeatable character and go back and devour the other pieces on the board. If there was a magic roll, perhaps it has something to do with the ability for a pawn to defeat a lion or a battle cat, if you will. I don't know. Maybe that could be a rule, but I'm still undecided on the idea that whatever the number is that you roll with the dice, that's the number that you get, and that there's no point in bothering to change the rules of you know, the rules of what make a dice roll a dice roll. Can you roll to 6? Sure, why not? So, there was a debate in my mind as to whether or not your pawns use the entire board going back and forth, or whether or not there's a split down the middle of the board, and that starting out, your He-Man team has to stay on this side of the board, and your Skeletor team has to stay on this side of the board until they get to the other side, and then maybe when you become the lion or the undefeatable, that you can switch over to the other side, or maybe the magic roll of 5 or 6, whatever magic roll is going to be, that allows you to transport to the other side of the board if we're going to split the board in half, which is a thought. So let me get up and give you a little bit of a description for. Well, I'll give you a more of a visual. Okay, so let's just suggest that your players enter the game on one side of the board, and I'm gonna say that it doesn't matter which character enters the playing field. And I'm gonna take some of these guys and just move them so that they're out of the way. So let's just imagine that you're the Skeletor team, and maybe you have to start with Skeletor, it doesn't matter. Maybe you have to roll a dice to see who gets to start first. I don't know if that matters, but nonetheless, let's say your Skeletor team, they have to start on this side of the board. And let's decide that there's going to be a split down the middle, and there has to be a special roll that allows you to traverse to the other side of the board. I keep pulling out of here. Okay, so let's decide there's a split down the middle of the board, and the only way to travel across the middle of the board is with a special roll. Let's say it's the 6. You know, there's a lot of 6s out there in the world. That's a whole nother video. Okay, so let's say that 6 will allow you to cross to the other side of the board so that you can deal with the pawns on the other side. And let's even assume that if you roll a 6, that you can choose to move 6 spaces as you are, or you can use your 6th space to jump over to the other side of the board. And I would likewise say that 5 might also be a magic number. Any number less than 5 or 6, and it kind of screws up the way that you count on the board. So let's say that you start out with a Skeletor, and he's got to roll the dice all the way to the other side of the board. Okay, so I've got a 5, what have you. Let's just use 5 as an example. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and let's say that I continue. I'm going to have to then go in this pattern, this snake-like pattern, and that he won't be able to come to this side of the board. He has to continue on this side of the board. But let's say I land on this square, and let's say I've got a 5, okay? And let's say that 5 and 6, let's just say that 5 and 6 are your magic roll that allows you to flip over to the other side. So let's say that for 5, if I decided to, and I'm on this blue space, then I could just trying to figure out. So so let's say that I can then decide that I'm gonna flip over and around, and then I'm on the other side of the board in the same blue space that he was on that side of the board. So now he's over here, but on the same blue space. And let's say that that is your roll number 5. So I don't know, I guess you could go to 4 spaces, and then 5 would be over here. And that if it wasn't so, then 5 would put you on the next space on your movement. So you could either land 5 here, or at 4, you could say, and then you land over here facing the other way, continuing in this direction on the other side of the board. But you have to roll a 5 or a 6 in order to do that. Let's just imagine that that's what it is. Okay? And then also other pieces enter the board, and they travel along, playing their game. And I'll put another piece on the board just to be helpful. Put a couple pieces on the board. Whatever. Okay, I'm having fun. I'm having fun. So let's say that you're going along on the board, and whatever your role might be, let's just imagine that for the sake of understanding, that pawns cannot take other pawns. So it doesn't matter if they're on my team or another team. If I'm rolling a count and I'm going along, and then I reach a point where there's another pawn, you have to skip over those pawns, even if there's 2 or 3, and end up on the next space. And likewise, I have another pawn here, so if I'm going to go in this direction, I have to skip over this guy and end up here. Oop, end up here. This is my double axe He-Man. Go ahead and mess with double axe He-Man. And then, so of course, the object of the game would be to get to the other side, or to get to basically where the sorceress is, the keeper of the undefeatable lions, and then and you could make up certain rules about having a vehicle that maybe only He-Man and Skeletor can ride on Battlecat and Panther. I don't know, but I could assume maybe that sorts itself out, because you can choose which character you want to move on the board. So you're going to be able to essentially decide that if you want to sort of lead one of your characters and you really want to focus on He-Man, then whenever you're rolling your dice, you just choose which character you want to move. And if you want to leave some guy behind, then you can leave him behind. If you want to leave, they got Zodak in there. If you want to leave him further behind, then he can stay further behind. And you can focus on He-Man, and he can become an undefeatable as soon as possible. And then the undefeatable character, the rule of movement would be that you can go both ways on the board, that only the pawns have to go one way. The pawns are always going towards the sorceress, okay? And I think there certainly could be a rule to avoid congestion at the end of the board, that your pawns might continue once they get to the end of the board, that they then have to start over again and continue in that pattern until they're able to get a vehicle. And maybe, again, with the magic roll, the 5 and the 6, let's just say maybe you need to roll a 5 or a 6 once your character gets to the end of the board in order to get a vehicle, but I'm not so sure that's necessary. Maybe as soon as you get to the sorceress, you get to become an undefeatable. And then the undefeatables, your job at that point in time, come on, Enan. These are so cute, but they gotta be able to stay. You gotta be able to stay on there. You crazy boy. Okay. So then your undefeatables, whatever you're rolling, whatever number you're rolling, you're gonna try and get the other pawns from the other team. And then if I can get rid of them on the other team, if I can stamp them out with my rolls, and again, maybe you need to roll a 5 or a 6 in order to get to the other side of the board. That could be a serious rule. And if you wanted to play a game where the entire board was this zigzagging effect, then you could do that. But I think maybe you could split the board in half, and then only a 5 or a 6 roll would allow you to get to the other side of the board. Could be a lot of rolling, could be pretty tedious to play this game, but eventually you're going to have your undefeatable characters as like the last characters standing. I'm going to take some of these off here. And let's just say that we got our merman to the other side of the board. And let's say, oh, merman's awesome. He's a reptilian. And let's say, okay, so let's say your merman got to the other side of the board and you've defeated all the pawns. And we can even suggest that there's a rule in place that only after the pawns are defeated can the undefeatables face off against each other, at which point, again, you have to roll the right number, and if you can land on top of the undefeatable, rather than skipping over them, because the space becomes void, so you have to skip over. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4, or whatever. Oh, sorry, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm gonna sound like I've got marbles in my mouth. You have to skip over the space if that's your final roll, because you can't occupy the same space as another character as a pawn rule. And if there are still pawns on the game, then your undefeatables have to skip over each other. But once there are no more pawns on the game floor, then your undefeatable characters, like Double Axe He-Man and Battle Cat. Rawr, rawr. If you roll the right roll, then you can have the game. Hey, I just got a 6. And then the final victor would be the person who has defeated all the other characters on the board. I think that's the way the game works. I assume that makes sense to everybody. And then at that point in time, you're just having fun. I'm going to put Zodak in the thing. Zodak's going to fly around. Evelyn on the board. Rah. Evelyn and Stinkor and Skeletor. I'm going to put Zodak in the flying machine. Oh wait, I'm going to put these two on the board too, just to make it more fun. Tila, a lot of fun. Oh, I'm having fun. Oh, okay. That's so much fun. Okay. All right, I'm going to sit down. Oh. I got to put the crown on. You have to take me seriously, you know. Like, if I don't wear the crown, like, are you going to take me seriously at all? I mean, I wonder. All right. I think I've made my point. I think it makes sense. It needs to be played. I think I'm going to have to try and convince my cousin to play this game with me. We'll have like a Christmas thing. We'll play Masters of Eternia. And it'll be a lot of fun. It'll be a lot of fun. And I encourage you at home to tell me if you have any thoughts on this game. Am I missing anything? Do you think the board needs to be split in half, or can the whole board be used for any direction? Does it matter? Does it matter if there's a magic roll or not for any reason at all? Can you just roll the dice and it means anything? Or, I mean, it means whatever. It's very late. You roll the dice and it means what it means. This is a 4, so it's a 4. If it's a 6, it's a 6. If it's a 2, it's a 2. And that's just the roll that you get. And if you're a pawn, you have to skip over any other pawn on your final roll point because you can't settle on the same square. And I just have to move you out of the way. I've got to take the same space. And that once you become a lion or a vehicle, then your objective is to defeat the other pawns. And then finally, once the other pawns are gone, then you can battle to the last. You can battle the battle of the undefeatables. And once you land on top of every piece from the other side, then you win. I put a little crazy faker in here. Just I didn't really want. He's not in the game, but he's sort of an interesting piece. Not a big fan of faker actually. I think he's an animation trick. But some people like faker. Yeah. Anybody out there in the internet who wants to contribute to this game, or if you would like to try to play online with me and we set up a game where somehow you can communicate to me and I can move your pieces along on the board and we can play a game on the game board over the internet, then that can be done. I see no reason why it can't be done. And I think this could be a really, really fun game. I think the MegaConstrux are a good idea. I think they're just the right size. I think it's a lot of fun, and I think as long as the rules make sense, and I might have to write the rules down or something so that they're solid, because if they're just floating around in my head, then it's like, whoa, like those rules could be broken. We need rules brought down from the gods of the heavens, the goddess. um, yeah, let me know and tell me if you think that there's any contribution to this game. Tell me if what I've said doesn't make sense and it's confusing. Otherwise, I'm gonna make another video eventually once this game has been played, and we'll probably even film. We'll probably film the game so that this can be tested, because I think this game needs to be tested. It needs to be played out, and it'll be a lot of fun. It'll be way loads of fun. So until we meet again, Internet, I, the Eternian King, I bid you farewell. You have the power to be a master of Eternia. Good day.